Oh, yes, I remember. This doll had almost been loved to death. You know, love inflicts the most terrible injuries on my small patients.
Bunny Lake is Missing does many things well. It has great story structure, interesting cinematography, a strong cast, and many other qualities. But one thing it does interestingly well with its story is its characterization, which helps create both a well-planned twist and a theme of what's real due to barely seeing Bunny until the end of the film. The characterization of Stephen Lake is very well done, showing hints of his obsession and psychopathic nature throughout the film. In the first interaction of the film, Stephen calls his sister Darling, only for us to learn later that they are in fact siblings. A little bit later, we see him being incredibly stern with one of the preschool teachers to being nearly intimidating, as well as having a high aptitude for logical reasoning. In another scene where Anne starts to cry, he consoles her by kissing her on the head. We learn several minutes later that he happens to have a picture of Anne as a child in his wallet. We also see him correcting Anne about how many days it took them to get to England by ship, and her believing him to be correct. We also see him trying to make Anne think the police are unhelpful and somewhat against her. Later on, we hear about how because of their father's death and mother's descent into delusions, Stephen spent his entire childhood taking care of Anne. In the pub scene between Anne and Superintendent Newhouse, we learn that Stephen somewhat manipulated Anne out of marrying the man who had impregnated her because she didn't love him, and according to Anne,
Stephen said I'd already made one mistake. Why complicate it with a second?
Your brother sounds like a sensible young man.
all of these scenes help hint at Stephen's obsession with his sister and his veiled insanity. It all perfectly helps build up and logically motivate the eventual twist of Stephen knocking out his sister and the audience learning that he had kidnapped Bunny. His psychosis is even further proved when he lies to the nurses by telling them his sister has been suffering from delusions of a fictional missing girl. However, most of this characterization becomes muddled in the third act. After Anne sees him again, his insanity is less psychopathic and comes off as if he has multiple personality disorder. He seems like an entirely different person, but not in the sense of a psychopath, showing his true nature, but more of a man reverting back into a selfish, violent child. Bordwell once said, "If characters are to become agents of causality, their traits must be affirmed in speech and physical behavior, the observable projects of personality." There's nothing in his experiences that truly would cause any childlike repression when he is always so professional, and that psychopaths never act this way. It also doesn't help that he happened to come back to the house to finish burning Bunny's things, and to bury her there of all places, causing a coincidental causality issue. Another issue is that while the build-up is great, there's no truly understandable reason as to why Stephen could be insane other than it being hereditary, which would be fine if it weren't for the fact that he possibly took after his mother's insanity, who seemed to manifest it only after her husband had died. Overall, the film does a great job of building characters, but seems to fail at culminating their traits into fully realistic people.
That's not her real name, you know.
Indeed?
Not Bunny at all, but Felicia. Isn't it delicious? A little affected for an American child, but I think it shows a strong imagination at work. The brother told me quite a lot. There's something unusual about that young man.